Hello and welcome back to my channel. Welcome all heretics and dissidents and antinomians and apostates and so on who might be inclined to listen to me. Today we are going to talk about quite a remarkable text. A text called Sexual Jealousy and Civilization by Anthony M. Ludovici, which was published in the International Journal of Sexology in 1949. I find this text remarkable because it is cathartic in this day and age. Not because I necessarily agree with all of it, but because it is such a refreshing opposite, a contrast to the age cuckery which has consumed our age. Today, men fall over themselves with age cuckery. The sexual jealousy of older men to younger men's partners, the young girls that we both like, obviously, has been erased from this culture. And it only occurs as crime. That's the only visibility it has. So men fall over themselves trying to be age cucks or profess age cuckery to where they shall not be seen as criminals. They shall be seen as age cucks. Because that's the way to be respectable now, right? But what Ludovici did, he wrote this essay where he goes to the very opposite extreme. This text represents the absolute most extreme expression of male sexual jealousy that I have ever read. It is so powerful because it is so refreshing. It is cathartic. This is catharsis against age cuckery. That's why I recommend reading this. Because it just... what he says, it rings true. And then it goes so extremely far that you wouldn't have thought that it was possible. But in this day and age, that gives us catharsis, right? Because if you're like me, you are so fed up with the age cuckery that you just need something else. Even if it here means embracing some quite ugly aspects of the male sexual soul. Which, well, let's get into it, okay? Those of us who fought in the First World War and experienced the lethal drudgery of trench warfare, with its terrible toll of young lives, were sometimes shocked when on leave to hear how complacently and with what suspicious fortitude the older men at home could speak of sacrificing their sons. Quite ordinary, decent, and respected citizens would without flinching enumerate their family losses and patriotically protest that even if they had a dozen sons, they would readily have given them all to win the war. So what we are seeing here is the expression of sacrifice in war as something young a man have to endure, because older men like me, middle-aged men, are sexually jealous. So that's not often expressed that way, is it? But Ludovici goes even further. He reimagines the big myths of our culture. The biggest one being the sacrifice of Jesus, right? As all about the sexual jealousy. Why did God sacrifice Jesus? Well, it was because he loved teenage pussy so much that this myth came about, that it expresses the sexual jealousy of men, older men, to our sons, or the men the age of our sons, to the girls that they get. So when you see it that way, I mean, why not? You know? Why not? It's not like these myths are literally true to begin with. So we might as well fill them with content that resonates with us right now. And what better way to read this than being this completely anti-feminist idea? That's not just anti-feminist, but also anti-young men. In this day and age where we have taken the age cuckery so far that we even have special age cuck laws called the Romeo and Juliet laws that puts these most nubile girls off limits to older men. They can have sex, but only with men who are just a few years older. So our culture has taken this age cuckery to its very most extreme. That is as far as you can get from this honest view of male sexual jealousy. We don't try to be an age cuck. Ludovici didn't feel the need to pretend to be an age cuck. He wrote this reconceptualization of even the myth of Jesus. I mean, let's look here at page 78, where he says, "Indeed, if we closely scrutinize this myth of an omnipotent deity choosing the cruel death of his only son in order to effect an end susceptible of achievement by any number of other means, it is hardly possible not to infer that there must be high probability of any theory which postulates the existence from the very dawn of human history, and even before that, of a deep and shamefully repressed jealousy of the young on the part of the older male, and that its root is sexual." So there you have it. God was sexually jealous of the young Jesus, who was consorting with these young women, probably many more than what is now written in the Bible. I mean, you have Mary Magdalene and some others, I guess, but surely he was getting all kinds of teenage pussy. So he had to be sacrificed, symbolically, of course. This is all symbolic of that jealousy, and it reflects not some theological truth, it reflects the cultural truth that older men are jealous. Now, I'm not saying I want to literally sacrifice young men. I just want to repeal the laws that make it illegal for us to have sex with young women. But it is cathartic for me to read this text in this day and age. So if you want just a little break from feminism, just a little breathing room, then reading this essay could be a good idea. Now, if you just look at how untrammeled male sexuality, if the older men could decide, it can go like this. In certain primitive cultures, this jealousy appears blatantly and shamelessly as a feature of the sexual life of the people, We are told, for instance, that in some Australian tribes the senior males are so powerful and sexually acquisitive that young men, quite unable to obtain females of their own generation, are compelled to consort with their seniors' rejected hags. Okay, that's taking it to an extreme, which I am not advocating. But it's good to read what every man thinks on some level, right? We feel this jealousy. And in this culture today, you can't express it. If you want to be a mainstream age cook, then you have to be an age cook because that's what the feminist rulers commands of you. And I am not abiding by that. I'm not parroting their ideas. I'm also not going as far as Ludovici, but I am enjoying this text. So, let us have that reading of Jesus as the male sexualist reading. That would be a sexualist theology, Christology, or whatever. I don't know if that makes me Christian to have this resonate with me. Maybe it does, and maybe this is how I understand my religion then. And that's very compatible with male sexualism. And now I want to bring attention to a fun fact quoted by Ludovici about the sexual peak of men. He quotes the Kinsey report, which finds the peak sexual performance of men somewhere around 16 or 17 years of age. Now, the peak capacity occurs earlier in the fast-growing years prior to adolescence, but the peak of actual performance is in the middle or later teens. Now, when you realize how much more virile young men are, and how much greater their capacity is to have many more ejaculations, it's understandable that they need to be suppressed, right? If older men are gonna have a chance, you can't just let them have all the young women, right? Oh, and here I can be thankful for pornography to suppressing them. These days, they put a lot of that effort into pornography and waste it that way. So if you're a smart man, you practice nofap and you don't do that, and you usually don't realize that nofap is a good idea until you get a little older. So then that puts you at an advantage, which is why I practice nofap very religiously now. And that, in effect, makes me better than most teenage boys at getting teen girls, quite frankly. So don't tell the teen boys about nofap. Really, if I'm gonna be selfish, I wouldn't want to tell them about nofap. And anyway, we now have a very peculiar, hilarious way of suppressing the sexuality of young men at their peak sexual performance. What society does now, which I'm sure Ludovici would have found very funny, is that we call them children, and then we punish we punish older women for having sex with them, right? That is one way this jealousy manifests, we might surmise here. And when older men go along with these feminist laws, and this ridiculous, most insane expression of feminism, which is the female sex offender charade. Well, that can be seen as subverting feminism into playing into this male sexual jealousy a little bit. Then you control female sexuality, and you control male sexuality by shoehorning it into that ridiculous abuse framework that the feminists believe in. So we harness that ridiculous superstition into the service of this jealousy that Ludovici is talking about. And finally, a note on this author. He was an intellectual heavy hitter in the early part of the 20th century, but then he stupidly supported Hitler before everyone knew how bad Hitler was, which was a bad move, but it really has nothing to do with what he is writing about here. So I think that can be disregarded for these purposes. What he says about sexual jealousy, that stands on its own. And I'm gonna include a link to the full essay so you can read it for yourself. So that's it for now, and see you next time. Oh wait, just one more thing. These older repressed men who don't admit to being sexually jealous, just one thing to think about. That they might not ever get over their age cuckery in their lifetime. But you can easily imagine that they get the chance to decide whether young men should be sent into battle. Think about that.